Okay, it is Wednesday morning. The Patriots are not practicing, which means Doug Kyed is back, the people's favorite guest, and he and I have, I would assume, I know I have, showered off all of the sunscreen, all of the sweat, all of the just filth that's sitting on that media hill, which was compounded when we played an excellent media flag football game. Notes to come at the end. Though, if I'm being honest, I think 90% of the social media interaction was just fellow media. And like NBC, video clips, there were tweets. Matt Doloff and Alex Barth, excellent folks from 98.5, were live tweeting parts of this as we played in the Gillette Stadium field for all of 25 minutes before we ended with a dislocated kneecap.
Not us.
People really want to know since I dropped that. But
the collection of media did. But
yes,
our kneecaps are in the right place.
Yes, that's very true. A single kneecap. Anyway, more on that later. So here's the plan today. We're going to zoom out after diving into Pat's Eagles very quickly, everything that happened. If you really want to know, Doug and Zach and I combined on notes for this close to 3,000 word recap of everything they had. Doug and Zach also had separate stories. Read all of those. Now, I know you're listening to this and then is asking you to make extra work, but I'm just telling you, you get every single 1-on-1, 7-on-7, 11-on-11, depth chart changes, rotations, penalties, sacks, catches, whatever you want. It's all in there. Take the time and go find it. Now, if you were running into someone at the supermarket today, Doug, and they said, "Oh, I forgot. The Eagles were at practice yesterday. How was it?" What's your 1-minute version of how yesterday went?
I focus mostly on the offense. So I would say that yesterday's joint practice with the Eagles should probably be a wake-up call for the Patriots about their offensive line, just because there were so many sacks. I think, what was it, 10 on 44 dropbacks?
So I had one that, and this is a good point to make just quickly. Yeah. When we're on the media hill, there are no definitive sacks. Very rarely does the coach blow the whistle and say, "Move it back here. That was definitely a sack." It's up to the media to judge on an individual basis when the defender runs by the quarterback, and sometimes the quarterback scrambling, whether that would have resulted in a sack. So you and I differed. You had 9 or 10. I ended up with 11.
Okay, 11.
And for me, it was 11 out of 44. A 25% sack rate for Patriots quarterbacks anyway. All right, I interrupted your supermarket conversation.
Yeah, so 11 sacks on 44 dropbacks. And that was not only the backup offensive line protecting Drake Maye, that was also the starting offensive line protecting Jacoby Brissett. And, I mean, any chance that Drake Maye had at the end of practice in 11-on-11s on driving his offense down the field was completely wrecked by the offensive line, because there was 3 sacks on 4 dropbacks. Maye made a decent point after practice saying that in a game, maybe he would have scrambled away or got away and made a play on the run. But still the point stands that there was Eagles defenders in his face almost immediately after the snap. And that's assuming that the snap from Antonio Mafe got to him in the first place, which it didn't once on Tuesday. And it seems like every day there's a blown snap from Antonio Mafe. Great guy, good guard. Doesn't look like a center so far. But I don't know. I just think that this should be a wake-up call that things could get this bad during a joint practice, because the wide receivers can beat Eagles defensive backs. The tight ends can beat Eagles safeties and linebackers. The quarterbacks are making some pretty decent throws when there's time for them to make them, but everything is just going to be destroyed if the offensive line stays this bad.
Yeah, the way I put my intro was like, look, Judon Mayo's discussed the success of this season is not going to be about wins and losses, right? It's not going to be in highlights or how much Drake Maye plays or even how well Drake Maye plays, because they're already counting on him. They're counting on him to be a part of the foundation. And that's what Gerard wants to see, is how many foundational pieces do we have on the roster for this rebuild? Well, the foundation of their offense is obviously the offensive line, and that's a leaky, crumbling mess. It's worse than we thought. And I'm going to hold back on some notes I have about, just the general takeaways. We're 3 weeks into camp, and that's what the heart of this episode is going to be about. I think that's totally true. I peaked a little bit at the defense and alternated early, then committed to watching the offense. And I would say they stood up to a freaking loaded Eagles offense for most of the day. Not just, Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley's hanging out now. You got A.J. Brown. You got Devontae Smith. Dallas Goedert at tight end going up against Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar. You had an excellent offensive line dealing with the defensive front we know has taken some hits, specifically with Christian Barmore. They did their jobs. Again, more notes on that. But is this – you mentioned a wake-up call. Is this get out of bed, there's a fire in the house? Or is this hey, you really need to get your just bleep together in a way that everyone kind of knew, but you're running out of last second chances here if you're the Patriots dealing with their offensive line?
I mean, they don't really have the choice of the first that they're firing. That I was like, because like they can't find a firefighter off the street right now. Like there's not a left tackle to be found out there. The issue what this really boils down to for me is that I think they do need to try more offensive line combinations. The one that I've been pushing for is Chukwuma Okorafor at left tackle. That would put Michael Wenu at right tackle and the rookie Layden Robinson at right guard, City Southall left guard, David Andrews at center. The issue with every single offensive line combination that the Patriots have is that they don't have a left tackle. They don't have anyone who is more comfortable playing left tackle than they do at a different position. So that's just an issue. Chukwuma Okorafor might be the best option at left tackle on the roster, but they're probably looking at him being like, but he's a better right tackle. And like they don't want to move Michael Wenu over to left tackle. Caden Wallace played right tackle for 3-4 years at Penn State. They've shifted him over to left tackle. Like clearly they still like the idea of him as a right tackle though, because that's what he's playing a lot in practice. So yeah, that's just what the issue boils down to. And unless they really do sign David Bakhtiari, which even if they did that, there's no guarantee that he's going to stay healthy for more than 2 or 3 games. And then maybe it's just a waste of money.
Or wants to come here.
Right, and wants to come here, exactly, because like I'm not sure what the benefit for him is at that point in coming to the Patriots, but unless like there's that sort of move out there, they're just never going to find that perfect group. But if you're looking for the best 5, as consistent as Vidarian Lowe has been, to people in the building, I just can't imagine a scenario where he is really one of the best 5 that they can put out there for week 1.
Okay, let's table the offensive line conversation.
Yeah.
It was the big takeaway from yesterday, but again, like we're going to dive into, you have 4 takeaways, I have 4, and we're going to overlap at some point, but we'll expound on that given not just yesterday, but 3 weeks of training camp and the preseason, which is 14 practices. One thought though that you just mentioned, Vidarian Lowe to people inside the building has been their most consistent option. And you can see it on the field because he started at left tackle for 8 straight practices after Caden Wallace had 4 cracks at it and Chukwuma Okorafor was there for the first 2 practices and has just gone home since and doesn't want to play anymore because he's at right tackle. And he started. Can you expound at all on that, what they're seeing with Lowe or just the line big picture, and then we'll move on to other topics?
Yeah, no, I just think that it is that they've believed that Lowe and Chukwuma Okorafor are the most consistent options there at tackle, that, those have been the best guys through the beginning of camp. That's why they're still out there right now. That's why they've been in those positions for 8-9 days, whatever it is. But, and that can be true, but also not be the best option. I think like if you still have the option of moving Michael Wenu to right tackle, I still think that that's a better option, but yeah, that's just what it boils down to. And, I honestly thought, and maybe this is still the case, it's a new offense, new system that Scott Peters is teaching the offensive line, new offensive line coach in Scott Peters, new offensive coordinator in Alex Van Pelt. Like maybe some of these guys who did struggle last year, a guy like Vidarian Lowe, could be better this year. But then when you see how bad the offensive line was in a joint practice with the Eagles, that's what I'm talking about for a wake-up call, that you kind of have to take a step back and be like, all right, maybe it was working against our guys, but maybe we need to second think this and try some other options before the season starts. Because Rod Mayo said that he wants the starting offensive line settled before the 3rd preseason game. That is like 9 days away at this point, 10 days away. So that's getting really close. And I'm not sure if a preseason game is the best time to trot out a new offensive line combination. We'll see if they do it on Thursday. But personally, that seems like kind of a dangerous scenario.
Yeah, it does. To the point about Gerard wanting that done in about 9 days, it's like sending in your Christmas list loaded with items that take 2 weeks to build.
Right.
It's someone who's not equipped to play Santa as much as you might like, and expecting to get that all done by the time the 25th rolls around. Okay, we're going to move on from the offensive line, but I'll just say this about yesterday. It both went as expected when you had an NFC contender who has addressed some needs on defense. And again, is freaking loaded on offense because the Patriots defense looked good. Towards the end, their offense completely collapsed. It doesn't mean there weren't good moments. Drake Maye had one of his longest, best completions of the day in 7-on-7s. Okay, it's 7-on-7s. You want to move on. Fine. He went 3 of 3 in another period. Jacoby Brissett had a couple of touchdown passes on
Yep.
the move, and Drake clearly was processing. It's just that he resulted in some decisions that arrived and go, I don't have any good answers. And at that point, he was sacked.
Mhm.
So it both was bad, and I saw our colleague Greg Bedard, longtime respect for his work, described this as traumatic because he said it reminded him of the practice 2 years ago with Matt Patricia, which ended with David Andrews holding his own huddle and screaming his head off at everyone, which has since been revealed to me that was like, look, this is the situation we're in. You're just going to have to deal with it if you want to bitch and complain. That's no way to live. But like, this is what we've got to do. We got to push through this. This is not that. It was really bad from the standpoint of the offensive line could not block. But that practice 2 years ago, one of the worst, maybe the worst I've ever seen, was undercut by how many free rushers you had. Like there were systematic failures of scheme and organization and coaching. This was the players stink.
Right.
And we know the players stink. So that's just a really, really important line that I want to draw because you can see the vision of the Alex Van Pelt offense and what Scott Peters is trying to do as a first-year offensive line coach. I don't know if he's going to get there, but it's a really, really important distinction. We knew the whole picture. Everything was bad under Patricia. This is not that. Yeah,
I also I know that I came out with the take that this needs to be a wake-up call for the Patriots, but I also think that like you said, the defense held its own against the Eagles offense. And like I mentioned, wide receivers can get separation, like tight ends are making plays, quarterbacks are making throws. It's not all bad. It just boils down to that one unit that is an issue right now. So I wouldn't call, Tuesday's practice traumatic. I think that it was overall bad because of one unit, but there's still potential hope that can be fixed. So I wouldn't say it was, that's all I'll say, I guess.
Yeah, and some fixes, potentially even, or upgrades, I would say, at other positions. So I have my 4 thoughts. Spoiler, the O-line is one of them. I don't want to talk about them anymore. I need a break. I need just a timeout from that group. Lead us off. You have 4 big picture takeaways. It's not a super market chat. You're hanging out. Someone comes to the house and they just want to chat Pats for an hour, and you've got like now 40 minutes because that's what we have. What's your first takeaway that you're sharing?
I'll start off with this one because I think that that it's coming. I'm wearing the University of Washington shirt, but like Jalen Polk just needs to start, and they need to stop messing around with these starting wide receivers because it's very clear that DeMario Douglas is the Patriots' best wide receiver. He's a slot wide receiver. We'll probably see him play some Z during the season, but he does his best work out of the slot. Jalen Polk, Patriots second round pick, looks like the best outside wide receiver on the roster. He's been the most consistent. Like, what you're getting out of him when you throw him the ball. He's got really strong hands, and he has the potential to make big plays, which is one that we saw in a one-on-one from Drake Maye on Tuesday. And we've seen him make other big plays throughout training camp. So it's not all just what we saw in that preseason game where it's like short routes and catching the ball, in some traffic or whatever. Like, no, he can go deep and get the ball as well. So last week against the Panthers, the Patriots starting wide receivers were Tyquan Thornton, KJ Osborne, and then I'm still trying to wrap my head around this one. Juju Smith-Schuster was the third wide receiver on the field, came in the slot when they pulled a tight end off the field, and then he was cut like a day later. So that's what's kind of telling me. That's why I say, like, stop messing around. Putting Juju Smith-Schuster out there as your third wide receiver when there's even a possibility that you're going to cut him the next day just feels like you're messing around. Just put Jalen Polk out there, put him out there for as much as he can, like give him as many snaps as possible, get him familiar with both quarterbacks. When they take the field after this preseason game, I want like a starting offense. I don't want them to keep rotating these wide receivers because at some point you're going to have to decide on 2 and 12 personnel and 3 and 11 personnel. And those are the guys that you want to have the best chemistry with your quarterbacks. And that needs to be DeMario Douglas, Jalen Polk, and someone else. And like, I don't have the take on who that third guy should be. If it's Kendrick Bourne, like if Kendrick Bourne's off pup, it should be him. I don't know what's going on with that situation. So I'm not going to like say for sure that he's going to be that third guy. And I think there's a case to be made for KJ Osborne, Tyquan Thornton, Jalen Reagor, or Javon Baker. I would probably lean towards it being either Osborne or Baker, because I think that Reagor and Thornton are great fourth wide receivers that you can bring on the field when you're in, 10 personnel or, 1 personnel, and just have them fly down the field. They're not going to be double covered. No one's going to be paying that much close attention to them. And there's the potential for a big play. Like, those are the fourth wide receivers that you want. You might not want those guys as the third guy on the field.
Completely agree. You and I talked about this in the press box after practice the other day. And I'm, tabulating all the targets. Like, Jalen Polk still has more than KJ Osborne. Oh, wait, he has more than Tyquan Thornton. Oh, and both of those guys have an average of 1 per day going on the 3 to last 4 practices, and they're still starting in all of these team periods, just like the preseason opener. What the hell's going on?
Right.
Well, what's going on, just to wrap up the Juju point, because this is my theory, is if you know you're going to trade or cut him, just trot him out there. Cross your fingers, your toes. Instead of giving giveaways like T-shirts or towels, just have a little card before every single seat in the stadium asking everyone to do the same. Cross your fingers that Juju makes some sort of big play so that we can sell him plus a 6th-round pick and maybe get a conditional 7th in return. It didn't happen. He got cut. I think that was the only reason he played, is just to get some tape that looks positive and persuade someone to take him. But you're right. I think Tyquan Thornton is having a good camp. It's not better than Jalen Polk. What I wanted from Jalen Polk, who is having more catches per practice than any other receiver, is more ceiling plays, because he's been steady. And that's great for a rookie. That's uncommon for a rookie. But there was nothing that says, oh, wow, like, I need to beware of this if I'm a defense, or he wins that way, or this is a guy that is going to come up big. He started to do that. 1-on-1s, 11s, red zone. He plays big. Polk should start, period, end of story. That's it for me. The NFL regular season is almost here, but you don't have to waste your time watching more preseason outside of the Patriots. You can play Prize Picks all summer. America's #1 daily fantasy sports app has over 5 million active viewers. And unlike other apps, you guys, you know this by now, you don't play against anyone. You just pick against the numbers. If you pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, you watch the winnings roll in, even taking $10 going all the way to 1,000. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play for just $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And then when football does roll around, man, if you think Tyreek Hill is going to go for over 90 yards in the season opener, Miami does pretty well in their season openers, that's an easy win. If you think the Patriots defense is going to show up and hold down Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, take the under on Joe Burrow. It's that simple. It's that easy. You've heard me talk about this for the Red Sox. God willing, they'll be playing in October. You can do all kinds of sports, but get ready for football with Prize Picks. It's available in more than 30 states across the country. So download Prize Picks today and use the code CLNS for a different bonus. This first deposit match is up to $100. That's right. Just put in CLNS on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game.
Do you want to go second, or do you want me to give my second one?
No, I'll go one. And this is, we'll stick with the receivers, which one note, well, actually 2 notes. So Pop Douglas is joining us at the end of this podcast. And it's another 4-minute drill, just like I had with Hunter Henry. He, A, was great. B, tells us how he hurt his hand in camp in a way that was completely unexpected. And I will leave it at that. But speaking of Pop Douglas, the second note being Kendrick Bourne, I do not expect to play at all in the preseason. Not a big surprise at this point. Hasn't practiced all the way out there. There is a chance he does not practice at all in training camp. But he's still progressing from the ACL. That's where that stands right now. Back to Pop. He's a world changer, right? Like we have seen the last 3 practices, his only 3 with the red non-contact jersey off. So he's a full go, full participant. You can hit him, you can do whatever. He's still got a little wrap in his hand, but he's fine. In those 3 practices, not only does he lead the team in catches, not only does he set the single day high for most catches in a practice, he's developed immediate chemistry with both quarterbacks who have looked at him at the start of team periods and in the 2-minute drill. So if you're making a list of things that I want to see from Pop Douglas, he does those and he goes, oh, no, I got more. Like he's seeking some kind of extra credit here because that's how much better he's been than the rest of the receivers. You could call it a year 2 leap. You could just call it a guy who's trustworthy in the slot, or just an average receiver and a sucky receiving core. But Pop Douglas has completely changed not just the game, not just the offense, the whole world for everyone he's around based on his ability to just get open and catch the ball, which is the whole job. And he's been awesome. 15 catches the last 3 days. No one else is even close.
Yeah, I mean, when he's on the field with Drake May, you kind of know that Drake May is immediately going to throw to him. Like, I think that Drake May is like, oh, nice, I get to play with DeMario Douglas on the snap. All right, I'm going to take advantage of this. Throw it to DeMario Douglas. Like, yeah, he's automatic out there, and obviously the only concern that you have is whether or not that he can stay healthy for a full season. That didn't happen last year, but at the same time, we're also not going to see the weird benching that he had when he fumbled, and they're not going to be messing around with him in that way. But he did have the concussion issues last season, and hopefully doesn't have a repeat of that. He did say that he's going to play a little bit safer this year, like know when the play is over, not necessarily try to keep fighting for extra yards if it puts himself or the football in danger. So I think he might have kind of learned his lesson there. But yeah, I mean, he's a dangerous wide receiver, and I think that there, as long as he stays healthy, he should be the Patriots' number one wide receiver. He should be the leading receiver and yards and catches after the season. And hopefully for his sake, he can actually get in the end zone this year as well, and not be a repeat of Jacoby Myers, who's waiting years for his first touchdown.
The other point about Pop, because I don't want to make it seem like, oh, he's just getting the ball all the time. Of course he leads in catches and he's like a decent receiver. You guys are blowing this out of the water. That's 15 catches on 16 targets. And yes, a lot of them are within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. But Jacoby has spoken about, hey, his game's a little bit bigger than that. Like, he's never going to grow past 5'8", 5'8.5", right, whatever he is. He's about 180, 185. But he can go down the field vertically. And I think they're going to try some more of those. We saw this in the Jets game. I think it was week 3. They should have been called for a flag, running a slot fade close to the end of the first half last year. And I think they're going to go to that a little bit more with him, because they do need to stretch the field, and I think he can do it. It's just completely different. And this is also something to know when we talk about the first 2 weeks of practice, when he's either limited, not participating in team drills at all, that the offense naturally looked like crap for stretches. Yeah. And even sometimes in 7-on-7s when the offensive line isn't even involved, he helps offset some of those issues up front as someone who can get open immediately, is working over the middle of the field, and has the quarterback's trust. He's not going to make the Pro Bowl. He's not going to make an all-pro team this year, at least, specific to the Pro Bowl. Who knows?
Right.
But it's just, it's I don't know. It just kind of, it doesn't fix anything, but it papers over or deodorizes a lot of what's going on with the offense right now, which, as I mentioned, kind of stinks. So, okay, what's your second takeaway?
Cornerback is currently the deepest position on the roster.
Okay.
Patriots are like 7 or 8 deep at that position right now, of guys who could potentially make the roster. And that being said, I still think there's a question about who that third or fourth cornerback is going to be and whether you fully trust them. But like, you're talking about Christian Gonzalez at the top, Jonathan Jones will be another starter, and Marcus Jones, as long as he ever gets healthy, will be probably the third starter. At least that's what the Eagles think. That's who they were, practicing against and Red Pennies before practice started during this walkthrough period. It was those 3 guys, Gonzalez, Jones, and Jones, as starting cornerbacks. Apparently they weren't aware that Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones were going to go down to the side field and not actually participate in practice. But as an aside, last week, after we saw Chukwuma Okorafor play in a preseason game after not practicing for the 3 sessions previous to that, who knows? Maybe Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones really are out there in the game on Thursday.
They were in pads yesterday.
They were in pads, which is more than Okorafor could say before he played in the preseason game.
And Marcus Jones might be one of these guys who likes to go to an NBA game or an MLB game and just always wears a jersey. And some people feel like they age out of it. I'm not one of them. I don't wear jerseys a whole lot. But he's wearing his jersey every single day to practice, whether he's in pads like yesterday or he's not, like Sunday and Monday. And I'm just going, am I going to see you at Fenway with this kind of new, like maybe not Jaren Duran today, but pick your favorite Red Sox player, and he's just wearing it and has a glove on him to catch something in the outfield or in his luxury booth, wherever Marcus Jones might be seated. But I think you're right. You wrote about this yesterday too. Yeah. I'll just push back though, because I think
Well, let's continue as well, just because beyond those 3 guys, then you've got Alex Austin, Marco Wilson. Both those guys have been receiving a lot of first team reps. And then Sean Wade, who makes the roster every year. Like, he's a big slot option that obviously the Patriots like quite a bit. Even if you're not asking a question about him, coaches seem to bring up Sean Wade. Then as a 7th option, or maybe, mix him in with those other 2, Isaiah Bolden, who didn't play last season because of the concussion. You've got Marcellus Dial, who's the Patriots' only defensive draft pick. And like Elliot Wolf apologize to DeMarcus Covington for only taking one defensive player. I don't know how it would look after doing that to also then cut that only defensive player who was drafted. And then I know that he kind of, we started off the summer not thinking very highly of him, but Azizi Hearn is a guy that Mike Pellegrino brings up at every single opportunity. Like, he constantly singles out the improvement that Azizi Hearn has made. And like, to Pellegrino's credit, Azizi Hearn really does make plays almost every day in practice. And if he was doing that at any other position, like let's say you take Azizi Hearn's camp and put him as a tight end who's like making those same plays every day, we're probably talking about Azizi Hearn making the roster as the third tight end or whatever. Like, if he's making the equivalent of those plays at a different position that's a little bit lighter. Same thing like at defensive tackle, like a guy who's making that many plays, you'd be talking about is actually earning a roster spot. Whereas realistically, because he's the 8th or 9th guy on this roster, there's basically no shot for him to make the team. But like, he's been a relative standout in camp just because of how many plays he's making out there at cornerback.
But the flip side of that, and I want to get to Marco Wilson, Alex Austin too, because I think it's worth noting what the hierarchy is for now, right? When Jonathan Jones goes out, who's the first to step in? Well, it's Alex Austin. And more recently for Marcus Jones, it's been Isaiah Bolden in the slot. Then Marco Wilson, 4th-year corner, who I highlighted as this forgotten Patriot, I think can make a surge to make the roster. Had some not so kind things to say about his time with the Cardinals, even though his second year, bunch of picks, forced fumble, yada, yada, started, I think, 14, 15 games. Azizi Hearn, the flip side of him, which you're right in terms of pass breakups, and I haven't tabulated those totally, but he's at worst top 5, maybe top 3 in terms of just total. The flip side is he's getting burned a lot. Like, there's a reason on the media hill some have thrown out Azizi burned instead of calling.
He was early. It's gotten better as the summer's gone along, I'd say.
Yeah, but he's still not repping with the ones in the way that I know. Oh, Jonathan Jones is out. Well, it'll be one of these two guys, and it's Marco Wilson or Alex Austin. Now, to pivot to those guys, because you're right, I think Azizi could make this late push. Are you ready for a deep cut? A la Keon Crossan, 2018, 7th rounder. Didn't have, not on anyone's 53-man roster projections, and then sneaks on at the very end, wins the Super Bowl ring, and goes to Miami, and God knows where he is now. But Marco Wilson gave up 6 catches in team periods yesterday against the Eagles. Alex Austin gave up 2 immediately to A.J. Brown. Giving up catches to A.J. Brown, who had 10 on 11 targets, by the way, according to our pal Zach Cox, is not some sort of grand failure or sin. A.J. Brown's really freaking good.
Right.
What, 6 catches in a practice for Marco Wilson to me is kind of a, maybe I need to look in the mirror the way that I feel about this player as someone I would have in my 53-man, but it's a competitive group to your point, and he could be left out unless he kind of rebounds here.
And I mean, he was also a 3-year starter with the Cardinals, and you're talking about him as probably being like your 5th cornerback behind Gonzalez, Jones, and Austin, 4th or 5th cornerback. Like, you can do a lot worse than that, than have a guy who's, and like, that's what speaks to me for the depth, is that like, in an ideal world, you're not counting on Marco Wilson to be a starter. You're counting on him to be your 5th or 6th cornerback, and having a guy who started as many games as he has and looks pretty good in the Patriots defense outside of that joint practice. I don't know. You're just in pretty good shape. And like, I'll just throw in the last name as well. Mikey Victor, the one who stood out, I think, the least out of this group, he still makes interceptions and pass breakups. Like, he's still out there making plays. So I think it's also a credit to Mike Pellegrino as a cornerbacks coach to have seen so much improvement out of all of these players since the spring. And obviously, cornerback is typically a position of strength for the Patriots. I think for a long time, people were just like, okay, well, if you got a talented group, whatever, like Bill Belichick as the coach, Pellegrino does a really good job with those guys every year.
He does. That is a small overlap. We have a Venn diagram and like the minimal definition of a Venn diagram with your takeaway, talk about the corners, and I have sleepers on defense because I think there are a few guys here. None of the corners made the top 2 for me, but we can come back to that in a little bit because we've gone 27, 28 minutes into this podcast and we have not talked about the quarterbacks. And that is, it's just like, put us in the penalty box for this. But here's the deal. We write about, we listen and discuss the quarterbacks all of the time. And nothing has really changed on this front. So if you've been following along at all, if you just didn't skip the last 3 weeks of episodes here in this podcast or other places, you would know Drake Maye is not going to start week 1. And it's not just because Jacoby Brissett was named the starter back in the spring, and Jacoby Brissett's been taking all of the starting reps since then. And Drake Maye is kind of underwhelmed, and I've used the letter grade C, C+ so far. It's because he's not ready. And that's okay, which is not to give you a blanket and a binky to make you feel better at home. It's just to state the reality of a 21-year-old quarterback coming from two different college offenses, which are nothing like the pro style system he's getting used to. Oh, and he's dropping under center for the first time. Oh, and he's relaying 15, 16-word play calls. With all of that included, we want to get to the info you really care about and know. 60% on the dot completion percentage for me in team periods through 14 practices. A 2.5% interception rate. Better than Jacoby Brissett, as is this number. 8.6% sack rate. So why is Drake Maye not ready if he's got a lower interception rate and a lower sack rate than Jacoby Brissett? Jacoby Brissett's pick rate, by the way, is just over 3%, and his sack rate's 9.1, neither of which are good. Jacoby is more accurate. He's more decisive. He's better downfield, and you get the benefit of the doubt when you know where to look and what to do. I don't think you disagree with me on this, but what did I miss? And just kind of checking in on the quarterback situation.
How will your feelings change if Drake Maye comes out on Thursday? And this could, this take could wind up like sour milk here, but like, what if he comes out on Thursday and looks really good? What if he completes 65% of his passes, throws a touchdown, no interceptions, but also picks up like 40 valuable yards on the ground? And then you see that he looks better in a game than he does in practice. He probably still will look better in 7-on-7s than in a game or 11-on-11s. But like, maybe what if you see him do that, and like maybe the 11-on-11 structure isn't the best gauge of his talent? Does your mind change at all if he plays well in this preseason game?
So my mind will not change a whole lot, because I'll treat this as really one data point within a set of at least 15. If you go back to the spring, there's more. And the preseason should be weighted more heavily than a non-padded practice. Don't get me wrong. But what I will be relieved, what I will be happy about, is the way that the discourse will hopefully change at least a little bit, which I shouldn't care about, right? As my computer goes off to remind me saying Drake Maye's not that bad. It's just to say that like the outsized reaction from all the numbers and the tweets that you and I have been like, yeah, he's been fine. It's not been bad. It's not been great. There's not one practice where you go, there's a franchise guy yet.
Right.
And that gets spun as, well, we can't discuss this on TV and radio. Like, it's fine. What's the tease like when I say he's a CC+? More after the break. No one's sticking around for that. So it's, oh my God, he sucks. What are they doing? They're failing him. Who's to blame? Who can we put, on the stage and, whatever, throw tomatoes at it or just scream at? So I think if he plays well, I'll be excited, because he'll have some success in the way that I think he's been very patient in the way he wants to play. He wants to do what his coaches are telling him. Find the check down, protect the ball. His footwork is cleaned up, according to Alex Van Pelt. That's definitely been better. But he's not playing the backyard style, which is ultimately going to elevate this offense as a dude who can create on his own. What you're talking about, at least as I heard it, is a guy who's creating on his own. Scrambles, off-platform throws, chucking it downfield. That guy has been missing through camp. So if we see him on Thursday, I'll be happy for him. I'll be happy for me. And I'll be happy that he's still in there, because we just haven't seen it in a while.
My other question on this is, okay, so last year, Bill Belichick said over and over again, it's going to be a quarterback competition. Like, everyone has to earn their role, whatever. We all expected heading into training camp that Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi would be splitting first team reps, that this would be a legitimate competition between those two guys, and training camp would decide it all. And what wound up happening was that Mac Jones took all of the first team reps. Like, maybe I think it was all of them, right?
Yeah.
And now, a year later, we expect this to be a quarterback competition between Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye. We hear, all year that's going to be a competition, that Brissett is the starter for now. And now we're 3 weeks into training camp, and Jacoby Brissett has received every single first team rep. Drake Maye has taken every single second team rep. And the only time he's played behind the starting offensive line is in a preseason game that he played 6 snaps. First of all, it is odd to me that this is the way that they're handling it, but also, like, I don't want to be the Drake Maye defender and like still act like he's going to start in week 1, because that's just not a realistic situation based on what we're seeing in training camp. But there's also a part of me that's thinking, has he gotten a fair shake? Like, has he gotten a fair opportunity to actually compete with Jacoby Brissett for the starting role when he's not getting first team reps, when he's not getting tested, when he's not getting protected by the starting offensive line in practice? And ultimately, I don't know what my point here is, except that it's an odd way of handling it. I'm not sure if it's been a totally fair competition. And in a lot of ways, it feels like deja vu going back to last summer when we were expecting a quarterback competition and then none transpired and the starter was decided all along. It just feels like that again to me.
Breaking news. We've got a young, exciting underdog team in Boston that's making a run for the playoffs. No, it's not the Patriots. Well, not the Patriots yet. It's the Red Sox. And if you've been following this season, you know that the Red Sox have been a hotter ticket ever since the season started. I want you to get down to Fenway with Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, where you will find killer last-minute deals, all in pricing, including those pesky fees, views from your seat, and the lowest price guaranteed. Guys, you've heard me talk about Game Time before. And look, whether you are in New England, whether you're down in New York, whether you're out on the West Coast, you can browse through the Game Time app to find any seat you want. Customize your spot, flash deals, zone deals. I've done this before, gone to a Yankee series. You could go to a makeup date, whatever it is to get you back into baseball with one of the best seasons we've had so far, especially for the Red Sox. And you can do this, again, with the lowest price guaranteed. I don't care where you get your tickets, but they should be now with the Game Time app, which you can download right now. Create an account and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. All you need to do is create an account and redeem this code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. It could be MLB, WNBA, concerts, etc. Just go to Game Time today. Find last-minute tickets in the lowest price guaranteed. So your first word that ran to my head is not one I want to share this podcast. You're upset? Are you still you unhappy about Zappy? You think Zappy got a fair shake? That's what I'm teasing.
I do also think that, like,
you know what I mean? Like, you're talking about last year, one guy gets all of the reps and my guy Zappy. Some folks said then, and they were wrong. Right. That it was ridiculous. Didn't get a fair shake.
I've never been a big Zappy guy, but like I will say, Zappy eventually passed Mac Jones on the depth chart, and like probably played a little bit better than him. I don't even know. Like, they were both so bad that it doesn't really matter who was better. But like at the end of the day, it was closer between those guys than they let on during training camp.
Well, Bailey Zappi got cut, so I don't know if I would go that far.
But then Mac Jones got benched, and Bailey Zappi started over him for the last 6 games.
You know what happened there? And you've played Mario Kart, yes?
Yeah.
So, and you can't really rage quit in that game. You have to finish, even if you two are the last and you're playing with someone else. And I'm going like back N64 vintage retro days. What happened there was not Bailey Zappi pulling up on the left side and going from 8th to 7th and passing Mac Jones. Mac Jones got so frustrated, as we've seen before, and went backwards on the course. Says, I'm not going to finish. I'm just going to drive the opposite way. And Bailey Zappi was like, oh, I passed him just by sitting here or being unable to get out of this corner. That's what happened, I think, last year. Which
Bailey Zappi didn't pass him, but Mac Jones fell behind. I wouldn't say he.
That's what I'm saying. He went backwards on the course.
Bad. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, like, when you look at I'm looking at their PFF grades. They both had 52.2. They just both happened to have the exact same PFF offensive grade last season, 52.2. But I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go back to last year, obviously, but I do think that like Drake Maye, you aren't screwing anything up by being like, all right, let's give him a run with the first team. Let's give him like one drive. Let's give him one series. Let's give him one turn with a starting offensive line just to see how this looks. I'm just a little bit confused why it hasn't happened. And they're being so conservative with him and they're being so safe with him that I think that they could test him a little bit more.
So I want to make a point here and then pivot because we got to go back to the offensive line. And then I will have time for my defensive standouts because I just want everyone to have a decent middle of the week in case Thursday's preseason game goes as badly as the practice that we saw for the offense on Tuesday. You cannot talk about the quarterbacks, Brissett, Maye, how they're being handled, how they're performing. Again, I'll just share them back to back. Here's Jacoby Brissett through 14 practices, a 66.8% completion percentage. This is 7 on 7s and 11 on 11s. 6 interceptions, 21 sacks. Drake Maye, 60% completion percentage, 5 interceptions on fewer dropbacks, and he has a lower sack percentage because he's got 17 total. So that's what it is. There's a gap. You can't talk about the quarterbacks though without the offensive line, because the Patriots do not have enough able bodies to fill out a viable second offensive line. They arguably don't have enough to fill out one. So that context, not only just in assessing Drake Maye in the numbers that I just provided, which are not good for practice, would certainly not be good enough for a game, need to be, again, it all needs to be contextualized, because I would argue it's not that Drake Maye's earned more starting reps. But what you need to do is have an environment that's conducive to evaluation. Let you know, do yourself a favor as a front office and Judon Mayo and Alex Van Pelt to know what you actually have by giving him a chance to actually perform and show his abilities. Yes. He can't do that when Kellen Deach is at left tackle, all due respect, and Zuri Henry's at right tackle. It's just not functional. So he needs more time with the starting offensive line. I think you and I are in agreement. It just has to happen. I don't care about the receivers, honestly. Just get him
right. The receivers are mixed around so much anyway that doesn't fully matter. He's still playing with top wide receivers at times. But no, I want to see him. If I was in an evaluation role, I would want to see what he looks like behind a better offensive line. And maybe we see that on Thursday. We'll see. But like, it is still odd that it's never happened in practice. That for 3 weeks that has not happened yet of him starting behind the top offensive line.
Right. Okay. So my takeaway in the offensive line, we talked about DeMario Douglas, world changer. Maye is not ready. He was my second takeaway. We got sleepers on defense that I think are real. The offensive line is worse than we saw it, and that's really a bummer. Chuks Okorafor has not been at right tackle for more than 2 weeks. He's also missed some practices. Kyed Wallace had some real rookie moments in one-on-ones, team periods. He's mostly stayed at right tackle. So Vidarian Lowe, I'll say it again, 8 straight practices now as a starter at left tackle. 9 if you want to include the preseason game. We'll see what Thursday brings. And then you only have 2 guys that you can count on to reliably snap the ball. David Andrews and Nick Leverett, who you looked this up as we were talking about it the other day, 42 career snaps at center in his 3 years in Tampa Bay before getting here. So it's not Antonio
and he had some miscues at center as well early in camp. They cleaned up a little bit, but it wasn't automatic for him at first.
So the big issue is you have to field the left tackle at all times, unless they want to run that old 4 O-line lineup from the Ravens divisional round game in 2014. And it sparked more rule changes, but they don't have a left tackle. If you include Okorafor and Sidy Sow, you're still just at 4 starting caliber offensive linemen, one of who really struggled early as a rookie is back at his old position. And Okorafor is like replacement level because he signed a 1-year contract before free agency started. This is a guy who didn't know or didn't want to test his market and sign with the Patriots anyway. I don't think I'm wrong here, but if you have anything to add, we can put a bow in this online conversation.
No, not really. I would just like to see Layden Robinson get some more run. See if that could help things. Even if you still don't have a left tackle. Okorafor better as a right tackle than a left tackle, but you have to put someone at left tackle, and I'd still probably rather put Okorafor at left tackle than Vidarian Lowe. I'm going to stay in the trenches real quick, and this doesn't need to be a long conversation. But I wanted to go to the defensive line because obviously this is a big conversation since Christian Barmore was diagnosed with blood clots. We still don't know his status. He was at practice on Tuesday, but was not in uniform, obviously just observing it in a hoodie and shorts. I think that this is a position the Patriots might scour the waiver wire during roster cuts. I think the defensive tackle and offensive line are the 2 positions, maybe possibly safety, but I think the team has more faith in the safeties than I do. But at defensive line, you really only have 2 locks in this group. Is that accurate? You've got Devon Godchaux and you've got Daniel Akwale.
I think Jeremiah Farms would need to leave like flaming dog poo on Judon Mayo's doorstep if he's not going to make the roster. But
that's
there
wild.
Is a line between those and the rest
Jeremiah
of the guys.
Farms started he was a practice squad player last year. And yes, Jeremiah Farms is likely going to make the roster, but his journey is a journey for a reason. He didn't get into a game. He wasn't on the 53-man roster until November of last year. And he's a 26-year-old. So yes, he's probably going to make the roster. But I think that more has to do with the depth at that position than necessarily him being this dominant force at defensive tackle. He had a great game on Thursday, but that was with the Panthers benching 33 of their starters and already coming in.
Number for a second, because I heard Zoe say that. I was in the booth doing a story when he said that, and then I heard it again on the broadcast. The maximum number of starters is 26 if you include kicker, punter, long snapper, maybe a returner.
Yeah, so they were benching for example, like Andy Dalton is their second string quarterback. He was among those. So
Right,
like
but
they
backup,
were dealing without their starter and backup at quarterback, but benched 33 players, inactivated them. So Farms looked amazing. He was great. I think he's going to make the team. We do have to consider the competition that he was playing against, the backups on last year's worst NFL team. I think that we all came into camp expecting Armon Watts to be a lock or near a lock at defensive tackle. Armon Watts was on the field for the Patriots' last defensive play against the Panthers, which for a veteran player is not a great sign in week 1 of the preseason. We'll see if that continues into this week. Maybe we try not to read too much into that, but when he's sharing the field with guys like Tristan Hill and Josiah Bronson, like that's not necessarily a great sign for his status on the roster. And if he doesn't make the roster, then you're talking about guys like Mike Purcell, who's just signed off the street, Tristan Hill, Jeremiah Farms, those guys being probably the top 3 behind Aquale and Godshaw. Sam Roberts is also in the mix, but I don't know. It's just, there's still a ton up in the air at that defensive tackle position. I think that Aquale will be the number 1 fill-in for Christian Barmore. He can do some of the same things, but they'll also need Farms and Hill and some of these other guys to contribute, but not a position with a lot of depth. And we just really still have no idea who those top 5 guys will be at this point.
I think it's fair. I was going to bring up Aquale, so let's talk about him now as far as the sleepers. I was doubtful in their apparent plan, and then confirmed by DeMarcus Covington, the defensive coordinator, on Monday, saying, hey, we're going to do what we do. Words Belichick never spoke ever. Right. I used to describe other teams that were like the Pete Carroll cover 3 Seattle teams, and name another coach who just had this marriage-like fidelity to a system. Good, healthy marriage, but you get what I'm talking about. Because they've just plugged a player in for Christian Barmore, and I argued he had a type of gravity and a type of attention and talent that would allow you to manipulate opponents' attentions to him, and you would draw up different plays, yada, yada, yada. Patriots just said, we're going to plug a Daniel Aquale and see how it goes. That's a guy who's a third down specialist for most of his career. Gets hurt last year, comes back, same injury as Matt Judon, torn bicep the week before against the Jets, and he doesn't come back. Tuesday's practice against the Eagles, I said, was the most telling day we've had so far, and maybe for the entire preseason. In that practice, according to Zach Cox, who watched most of these, and I saw a couple of these plays myself, but not all, 2 run stuffs, 2 pressures, a holding penalty drawn, and might have been in on a half sack. That's a Christian Barmore great day, let alone Daniel Aquale trying to be that type of player. Like, this was an excellent impersonation of Christian Barmore at his best for Daniel Aquale. So I don't know how long he keeps that up. He might peter out. That's what I would suspect, just based on his career trajectory.
Yeah.
But the other guy I would mention as far as defensive sleepers, O'Shane Ximines, I think, is legit. Yep. And this is early. He had 1.5 sacks against the Eagles. He is repping with the starters now for the last 3 practices. He had a forced fumble in the preseason opener against the poopy Carolina Panthers, and also had run stuffs in these areas. He'll need some help setting the edge, as we all watched in that broadcast going the first quarter into the second. Matt Judon's coaching him up, and there's Judon Mayo saying the same thing. But that guy's going to make the roster. He's a core special teamer. He's playing on defense. He's in.
Yeah, no, I think, I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time getting.
Was that someone cutting down my O'Shane Ximines take behind you? What was that? Like?
No, it's more O'Shane Ximines.
What was the sound?
He's been good. And I think that he'll be that like 6th edge defender. I have a hard time getting too excited about Daniel Aquale even after a good practice, just because like he's been in the league since 2019. I know that PFF grades for defensive linemen aren't always the most accurate or dependable, but like he's topped out at a 63.1 defensive grade. In 2022, he did have 22 overall pressures, which is pretty solid for a defensive lineman. But like, I'd say that out of so many people on the roster, like we kind of know what Daniel Aquale is. I'd be pretty shocked if suddenly he had a breakout season. Maybe all he needs is an opportunity to replace Christian Barmore, and this is it. But he's going to be 31 years old in January. So that's already like kind of middle age, if not older, for a defensive lineman. I don't love hearing like, we're going to do what we're going to do, and just being like, okay, we're going to plug in Daniel Aquale for Christian Barmore, because I do think that you need multiple different guys to be filling that role. I think that in an ideal world, it's Aquale plus Farms plus potentially someone like Tristan Hill rushing the passer, or, Mike Purcell as being that backup nose tackle that can fill in space next to Devon Godcha. I think it's going to have to be an all hands on deck type situation to replace Barmore. And I don't love the idea of just plugging in a, journeyman 30-year-old defensive tackle and hoping that he can replicate the guy that you just paid, $70 million to, or whatever it was on a contract extension. So both of those good sleepers. Zimenez, I think, has been more consistent throughout the summer, but not necessarily guys that you want to count on to be replacing, in Aquale's case, Barmore. And if something were to happen with Matthew Judon, Zimenez. And we still don't know really what the solution to the Matthew Judon problem is going to be, but I'm still, I was talking to Brian Barrett on, the Ringer podcast last night. He was asking me what I expect with Matthew Judon. I'm like, my answer hasn't really changed in 3 or 4 weeks. I expect them to figure out a deal with him, but it's been a long time at this point and nothing's happened. So I did think it was interesting that Jeremy Fowler floated out there that teams had been calling the Patriots about Matthew Judon and potential trade. There was no follow-up to that. There was no that the Patriots have said no, or that the Patriots are interested. So we don't really still know anything beyond the fact that other teams are interested. But I don't know. I just can't foresee Judon playing for $6.5 million this year. And if for some reason he is off the roster before the start of the season, then someone like O'Shane Zimenez does become much more important to the team.
So just to clarify, because you drew an important line there. Zimenez is younger, less proven, not a journeyman like Daniel Aquale. Yes. Aquale is a sleeper in the fact that I don't think a lot of people know his name, and I think will soon. It's more by virtue of the fact that he's just been starting every single period.
Right.
Did the preseason opener that I think people should pay attention to him. Zimenez is the actual sleeper, late riser, also overlooked, headed not maybe for a breakout year, but is going to impact this team in a way that I don't think anyone, even beat writers, expected right after he signed, or even going through the spring and in the summer. I threw him out once or twice, but I'm not going to play my flag on Zimenez Hill and take credit and say that I founded this place and kick off all the locals because I put it in writing first. One last thought I had, which is now running away from me, just about the defense. I think it's fine. And this was the thought. I don't want to talk about Matt Judon. I'm waiting. And this isn't, because of anything recent or personal. We're all in wait and see mode. That's what happens. But if you do trade him, your pass rush is in deep trouble. Though Josh Uche got some run with the starters, I will say, yesterday, and produced with a sack, even a run stuff, believe it or not, against the Eagles. I just wouldn't worry about this defensive front as much. They are an injury away from real trouble, I would argue, but they're well coached. They have the system in place. Secondary's good, and they brought everyone back. And you saw what it looked like last year. Still a top 10 defense, and you were the most injured defense in the whole league. If you just come back to average, they're going to be fine. Okay, speaking of fine and injuries, we got 2 minutes. So our team in this media flag football game, which was brought back for the first time since 2017, the year before I started on the beat, it used to be joint practices. You'd have the Patriots writers against the Saints or the Jaguars or the whomever other beat writers. So the Eagles come up, word gets to PR, because I'm in constant contact with Stacey James, about a variety of things as our PFWA president. And he's like, hey, there's one Eagles writer who wants to play with you guys.
We would have smoked him.
We really would have. And he's like, do you want to just play on your own? I said, sure. I don't really want to take the lead on this game. And we played on the field at Gillette, which don't get me wrong, very cool. We had one game going. Tom Curran was our quarterback. He picked teams along with Mike Cadlick, who played backup, I think, at Worcester State, meaning quarterback. And we just had basically hockey shifts. Half of us played offense. The other half played defense. It was 7-on-7, went from the end zone to the 40. Again, a lot of fun. Ended, though, with the dislocated kneecap of Amit, longtime producer of this podcast, and the engine that makes all of the CLNS Media Network go. And when I say dislocated kneecap, it was on the side of his knee. And this was from celebrating a pass breakup against our Zach Cox, who had 2 touchdowns, was MVP. And Amit's fine. He's walking. It snapped back into place. He's going to be okay. I just, I don't know. It feels like Mad Libs that I just filled in describing this game. What did I miss?
Didn't miss a whole lot. I was bummed, like despite Amit's injury, that we didn't get to finish the game. There's still 15 minutes left on the clock, but we did come away with a 2016 win.
Yep.
I didn't allow a single reception. I wasn't even targeted. Cadlick was terrified of me. Didn't even look my way. Kyed Island out there covering 6'6" Kari Thompson. Still didn't look my way. Not a whole lot. Impressive performance, certainly from Tom Curran and Zach Cox. Zach was the number 1 pick, but great job by Tom picking his team. He picked a lot of the older time beat writers, whereas Cadlick picked a lot of the younger CLNS folks, and us old guys prevailed. That's all I got to say.
It was a lot of fun. We're going to do something later as a beat. We just are really lucky to work with a lot of like fun people, and not always the case when you work at different places, but we had good fun. Oh, Chris Mason, shout out. He would also have been at the podium after the game for the interviews. Had a safety sacking Mike Cadlick, and I think one other sack. So that's how I represent our pal Chris Mason. Oh, that's it. Coming up, Pop Douglas with another 4-minute drill. All the jokes you saw on Twitter about him breaking his hand or hurting his hand because he caught a Joe Milton pass thrown too hard are true. Coming up next. Thanks, Doug.
So it was a big day for Pop Douglas, not just because he had the first 3 catches, I think, in team periods today here after Patriots training camp, but because he joins the 4-minute drill, new segment of the Pats Interference podcast. I told Hunter Henry last week, I know 4-minute drills, you're trying to run out the clock. But here, you're just answering questions, football, then non-football. I'll start the clock and we'll go. Sound good?
Let's get it.
All right, appreciate you, bro.
Yes, sir.
So first question for Pop Douglas here in the 4-minute drill. Can you confirm the rumors, the very serious, real rumors that your hand injury was the result of Joe Milton just throwing you a pass?
That's kind of true. Nah, working out. Yeah, we were working out in the summer together. He launched the ball. I go to grab it, and then I trip and fall on my hand.
So I thought it was too hard. It turns out that's actually true. This joke that we start the segment with leads to an actual some reporting.
Training together. That's crazy.
All right. Hope you don't get too much trouble here for that one. Let's go. You told us late last year, I'll never forget this, in front of your locker room in a small scrum, that your name is actually spelled DE capital M, DeMario. Mm-hmm. What does it feel like when your name as an adult changes? How did you find out? What was that feeling like?
Oh, how did I find out that M was capital in my name?
Yeah. Your name suddenly you had been writing incorrectly your whole life.
Yeah, I was writing it incorrectly. I brought something home to my mama, and she was like, "You know the M in your name capital?" The whole time I was spelling my name with the lowercase m.
So were we.
It was crazy.
Yeah. That settled now, the capital M?
No, I write it capital M, since that was like 3rd grade, 4th grade. That's when I found out.
All right, back to football. Tell us about a favorite concept. This could be high school, it could be college, it could be here in the NFL. What does the pass play look like, and what's your route?
Let's see. I say post wheel. Post wheel. I think I was scoring on a post wheel throughout my whole career.
Yeah?
Yeah, so hopefully I get a post wheel this year.
So obviously you're in the slot and running that wheel. You kind of go towards the sideline and then cut up and put on the afterburners.
Yep, and I ran the post too. I originally scored on both of those.
All right, very good. So players always talk about wanting to have a certain teammate in the foxhole. I love being in the trenches with this guy. He's got my back. Let's say Pop Douglas is in some kind of confrontation. Mm-hmm. Who's the receiver in the room you least want at your back? Be like, thanks for the help, but this guy maybe not in the middle of the scrum.
The least person I want?
Yeah.
I don't know. We got some dogs on the receiver. They mean.
All dogs
the receivers
across the board?
mean. Yeah. Let me see. KB.
Okay. Keep banged up.
KB.
All right, very good. We're closing in here in the 4-minute drill. I need 2 names, 2 quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. One that you faced last year and you really liked those reps going against this guy for whatever reason, got the best out of you. And the other one, you see him across the line. You're like, gosh.
Cornerback,
yep.
The one I like and the one I dislike?
Yes.
I think Bill's Teron Johnson.
Teron Johnson.
I think just because we see each other twice,
yep,
it's a good matchup. You talk about the one who I go against, I'm like, I'm finna kill him.
He's like, I can't. Yeah, I just can't get around him.
Who? Oh, I don't see nobody.
And no difficulties?
No.
No?
No, I'm going to find a way to outwork.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to have to.
He sounds like a receiver. Couple more for Pop. We got about a minute left here in the minute drill. What is Pop Douglas doing when he gets home from a training camp practice like this one? What are you eating? What are you watching? Who are you hanging out with?
It depends on the day. So if I'm like really tired, I might go straight to the hotel. But if I'm going to get you.
Keon White dropping in.
If I don't go, I'm on NCAA.
Yeah?
I get my NCAA in. Yep, I got a new NCAA.
Okay, we're just going to stick with this because NCAA is on everyone's mind. Are you playing with Liberty? Who are you playing with? What kind of system?
I'm kind of defeated on with Liberty right now. I think I won one game. I play with Ole Miss and PS5.
All right, so spread, yeah, PS5. Good man. All right, last question. We asked this to Hunter Henry. It's all in jest. What is your least favorite media question to get when you're talking to all of us at once?
Say when it's about somebody else.
Oh, why is that?
Just because, I mean, I don't want to say anything about anybody and then somebody turn it into something that is really not, you know? So I just wanted to keep it to myself. So if I say something about myself, I mean, y'all can do whatever with it.
Yeah. We can even write your name incorrectly for the first 3 quarters of the season, and it's cool, as long as it's not anyone else. You see what that says?
4 minutes.
4 minutes. This has been the 4 Minute Drill for the Pats Interference Podcast. Pop, my man, appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Yes, sir.